Hi everybody, I'm Marbozir and welcome back to Let's Play Shadowrun Hong Kong. So, we're back on the boat, our museum run went rather well. Let's claim our payment. Also, I do believe we can post some data to the Shadowland BBS. Post some paid data for sale, yep, we can do that. Alright, so, back to our payment. Open the jobs directory and claim the payment. You submit the job as finished and await the response. A few moments later, a message pops onto the screen. From Mr. Drake to Hulk. Well done! You went above and beyond what I asked, and liberated some truly precious artifacts. I've attached the payment you're owed, plus a little bonus. I trust that you'll keep quiet about what exactly was liberated from Leo's little museum. I'll collect the box from Kindly Cheng shortly. Mr. Drake. Well, that went well. So, before we accept our next job, let's go talk with some people. Not sure if we can talk about anything new, but let's have a look. I suppose we can ask them about the previous run. Sorry about the smell. It's long past time to purge the coolant sump. If I had access to the proper equipment, this would not be a problem. I could clean the fluid and reuse it. But alas, halogen treatment chambers are rather hard to come by. Even in a place like Hioi. He shakes his head. Anyway, my friend, you didn't come here to discuss the ins and outs of shop maintenance, I'm sure. So, what does bring you here? Any thoughts about that last run? An interesting diversion. The mummies that we encountered were fascinating. Dead flesh reanimated by the controlling will of an astral being bound within. Of course, the notion that these creatures are genuine reincarnations of long-dead humans is ludicrous. There is nothing innately magical about human consciousness. The soul is an antiquated concept rooted in wishful thinking. A pity that our time with the creatures is at an end, but the job is done, and we have received our pay, and the blade you recovered should prove quite useful. Oh yeah, that weapon we got is quite nice. A fine day's work, all things considered. Now, what else do you have of me? I've been thinking about what we talked about last time. Mind if I ask a few questions? He tilts his head. Be my guest, I have no secrets to keep. About the drone self-repair system that you invented, how did it work? Sure. There were three distinct elements to my approach. When these elements were all working in concert, prototypes that utilized the process displayed remarkable self-repair capabilities. This may be a lengthy explanation. I can skim over it if you please, or I can break it down for you if you're genuinely interested. Alright, let's say we're interested. Give me the long version. I want to know how this process of yours works. Sure. He shifts his cigarette to the corner of his mouth. Very well. The wrong version it is. The first element of my process was an outer skin that the drone could be wrapped in. A refinement of older biomimetic self-healing materials modeled to emulate the self-repair capabilities of living beings. Imagine a polymer composite interlaced with microtubules. Capillaries, if you will. These vessels are capable of delivering bonding agents to the site of a wound as it occurs, thus healing it. I've heard of smart materials that operate on a similar principle. They've been around for decades, haven't they? Yes, though they remained uncommon until recently. As I said, my material was a refinement on those earlier designs. It was also only the first part of a system. The synergy between the three was what made the project work. The second element involved the underlying structure of the drone's architecture, the servos, gears, circuits, etc. Utilizing self-assembling materials and redundant systems, I created a system by which damaged components could be fabricated and replaced by the drone itself, without any need for human interference. Alright, so you have self-healing skin and a self-replacing underlying structure. What was the third part? Finally, the system had a magical component. The corner of his mouth dips downward. I must confess a certain degree of ignorance when it comes to this portion of the project. I understand some of the theory behind what was done, but the specifics are beyond me. Tell me what you know then. In layman's terms, a magical element was necessary to render the system self-perpetuating. Obviously, no purely mechanical system can repair itself indefinitely. The synthetic skin becomes more brittle with every wound that it heals, and the automated assembly components will eventually run out of materials to work with. As a rule, fighting against entropy is a losing proposition. But with magic, we can rewrite the rules, weaken the grasp of those entropic forces to the point that they are rendered negligible. Think of magic as the lubrication that keeps the gears turning. I wish that it weren't necessary, but I am also a realist, and I must confess that it is required for the system to work. And this package of systems is what your former colleagues stole from you. What you need to get back. Yes, given enough time and resources, I might be able to recreate the first two components of the system on my own, but the magical component is, and will forever be, completely beyond me. That is why it's so important that we recover my research and the prototype that was stolen, and we will recover them. Of that I have no doubt. What do you think that a post-human future would mean? There's a hard limit to the fusion of a man and a machine. Doesn't your vision of the future require us to get past that? You're speaking of the essence limit and the problems associated with essence loss. Yes, of course. It will be a problem, but as with all problems, a workaround will present itself. Of this, I am certain. Are you basing that on anything, or are you just taking it on faith? He smirks at you. No, my friend, I am not taking it on faith. My beliefs are rooted in my own observations and experiences. For the time being, let us leave the matter at that. I have more questions. Feel free to ask them. I will provide what answers I can. What do you think that a post-human future would mean? Freedom. He takes a long drag on his cigarette, sucking the smoke deep into his lungs. When he speaks, it erupts from his mouth in a plume. The ultimate freedom to direct our own progress, and to steer ourselves as people in whatever direction we wish. Consider, my friend, every aspect of Koschei was tailor-made for a purpose, dreamed up, designed, and built by a singular guiding intellect. Alright, keep going. Now think of the circumstances surrounding your own birth, and the building blocks that shaped you into the man that you are today. Your mother and father exchanged fluids, sloppily no doubt, and with all the mindless abandon such biological imperatives entail. Whoa, man, you leave my parents out of this. That might have been the ugliest description of sex I've ever heard. It's true. Ugly perhaps, but accurate. Sexual intercourse is an inaccurate process, a messy delivery mechanism for genetic material spurred on by hormones and base urges. Any attempt to guide the process on a societal level gets branded eugenics and decried as monstrous for obvious reasons. But I digress. The point I was making was that the forces that shaped you, and me, and anyone else you care to mention, were ultimately mindless ones. Blind, manipulative biological drives that led a sperm and an egg to collide. Add in a roll of the dice and a dash of Mendelian genetics, and here you are. Okay, this guy is getting a little bit creepy. I see where this is going, at least I think. The natural processes of evolution and sexual selection guide the development of our species through trial and error. Throw a few billion darts at the wall and see what sticks. In the future that I foresee, this process will be reined in, guided by our own controlling intellects. The co-opt of an antiquated phrase, the myth of an intelligent design, will become a reality, but we will be our own gods, reshaping ourselves as we see fit. Yeah, okay, I think I see where this is going. Let me get this straight. You're a scientist, possibly mad, who is literally telling me that he wants to play God. How cliché is that? Tell me again, what does this have to do with post-humanism? Or biological evolution is full of choice, Ractor. We chose who we mate with. That choice helps to determine the traits that our offspring will inherit. Very true, but the pool of possible traits that biological reproduction can select for is small. If I wanted to produce offspring, with gill slits instead of lungs. I'd be out of luck. In a post-human future, I would face no such limitations, nor would anybody. We would no longer be slaves to the selective processes that have dictated our development since time immemorial. We would truly become the masters of our own fate. So essentially, you want us all to be what? Robots? Let's say that you're right. At what point do we cease being human and become something else instead? He shrugs. Whenever we choose to define ourselves in that way, humanity is an intrinsically human concept. If we decide to rebrand ourselves as a different species, that is our decision to make. I strongly suspect that nobody else would care. There are other forms of intelligent life out there, Ractor. Dragons, for example, they might care. So tell me, what do you want? What's the endgame that you envision for us in this grand post-human future? Koschei raises itself on its legs, stretching so that Ractor can caress its chases. The motion is alarmingly fluid, more like a living thing than a machine. Ractor traces his fingertips over the drone's shell, his eyes focused on an imaginary point on the horizon. Okay, I have a slight suspicion that this robot is a little bit more than just a robot. It seems to be becoming a little bit obvious. But hey, we'll see where this is going. We have placed such unnecessary limitations on ourselves, my friend. It fills my heart with sorrow to know what we could be, but are not. I would see those limits stripped away, peeled back and discarded for the betterment of all. In the future that I foresee, we will open our eyes to the possibilities that surround us. Bodies reshaped to thrive in the deep ocean and the depths of space. Bodies inspired by nature, or the human imagination, or both. Bodies that can be used and shed and used again, inhabited as their wearers see fit. The timely realization of such future is what drives me forward. It is the cause to which I have devoted my life, and thankfully it is inevitable. Assuming, of course, that we don't destroy ourselves first. Mind if I ask you about something else? Yeah, let's talk about something else. Well, actually, I think that's all of it. I have to go. Maybe we could continue this another time. We already talked about our last run and... Wait, did we talk about... Yeah, in this post-human future that you're trying to bring about, what role would a drone like Koschei play? Yeah, we didn't ask him that. A similar one to the role that he plays now, I imagine. He was designed for a purpose, after all. That said, I can see the techniques that went into his design and fabrication having much broader ranging applications. You're pretty attached to that drone of yours, aren't you? You've even assigned it a gender. You keep calling it him. Yes, of course. Koschei is very close to me. As if on cue, the drone scuttles forward, the hardened tips of its claws screeching across the metal floor of the shop. It comes up short, just in front of you, a strange mechanical chitter rising from deep within its chassis. You might accuse me of anthropomorphizing my little companion, assigning human characteristics to him, where in fact there are none. Truth be told, there is much more to Koschei than meets the eye. But that is a different conversation, one best suited to be held for another time. Yeah, I think this conversation has been creepy enough already. If that's what you want. He nods. It is. I have work to do, and I'm sure that you can find better uses for your time than listening to me prattle on. And with that, I'm afraid that I must ask you to show yourself out. We can continue our talk at a later time. Yep, that was a little bit disturbing, I have to say. But yeah, I have a feeling this robot or drone of his is a little bit more than just a drone. I'm just saying. So let's have a chat with Gaichu then. The cabin is in far better state than it was previously. The heat has been adjusted down and the ventilation is restored. The boxes of junk and parts have been stacked and neatly arranged, and Gaichu's small amount of personal gear is tucked away in a corner. There is a small mat in the center of the cabin that looks like it doubles as both a rug and a sleeping pad. Gaichu is seated in a lotus position, eyes closed. His fingertips rest on a braille reader that is plugged into his PDA. The device fills the room with a soft clicking from the pin combinations. As you approach, he lifts his hands from the reader's surface. Hello again, Hulk. Is there something I can assist you with? Looks like you've carved out a nice little spot here. If you say so, I doubt it would be suitable for others, but I do not require much by way of space and have few possessions. So long as I have a quiet area in which I can sit and relax, I'm happy. Now, what is it that you wish to discuss? Any thoughts about that last run? A curious affair. I wish we had more time to study the nature of the mummies that we found in the catacombs, as I am unaware of any spirit or paranormal phenomenon which could explain their existence. Bound spirits? A strain of HMHVV? Perhaps something else entirely. Their nature is unclear to me. It is unfortunate that we'll be unable to study them any further. I doubt any remain within the catacombs, and even if they do, it seems unlikely we will ever return there. At least we retrieved a fine blade in the process, though. Is there anything else I can do for you? What were you reading? Gaichu draws himself up, holding his palms in his lap. With one toe, he pushes the braille reader away. It is called Hagakure, Hidden Leaves, written in Yamamoto Tsunetomo, as a treatise on what it means to be a samurai, and how one should best serve one's lord. Required reading for the Red Samurai, unsurprisingly. Wasn't he forbidden from killing himself when his lord died? Gaichu blinks, obviously surprised. A wide grin spreads across his face. You know of him then? Yes, that is Tsunetomo. He was eager to die and show his loyalty, but Lord Mitsushige had always found that custom to be wasteful. The author has had a central thesis. When there is a question of life and death, always choose death, throw oneself onto the fray with no resignations, and act on instinct alone. My current state of affairs speaks the truth of this more robustly than any lesson. What's the rest of the book about? That sounds a little crazy, honestly. That doesn't sound too different from life in the Redmond Barrens. Truly, I have fought a few Shadowrunners in my life, and I admit, they have always proven more tenacious opponents than corporate soldiers have. On the street, it's always life or death. You get a lot of practice. Then I am not surprised at the prowess of those that I have encountered. Soldiers train, but rarely against real opposition. Tsunetomo believed that to truly embody the virtues of a samurai, adherents should be mindful of their path at all times. Never stop training, always question how one's actions reflect on their lord. Above all, be prepared to do your daily instinctively at any time, no matter what the cost. If I recall correctly, the author was a bureaucrat who never fought anyone. Gaichu's lips curl into a slight scowl, but he nods in agreement. That is true. Tsunetomo never fought anyone, and some have criticized him for trying to speak of being a warrior without ever lifting a sword. But I believe that he has many things of value to say. He cared a great deal about the deeper meaning of being a samurai. If lived experience is the only path to truth, then all philosophers are fools. I would tend to agree with that, actually. I respect him for trying to elevate the philosophy. He sounds a bit like an armchair general to me. Let's go with this one. As do I. No one is perfect, but we should all strive as diligently as he to elevate our way of being. Most walk through life blind, never understanding their own desires or the effects of their actions. If more of us meditated as deeply as Tsunetomo on a lot in life, I suspect there would be less misery in the world. What does he say about masterless samurai like you? 7 times down, 8 times up. More specifically, if a samurai has not been a ronin at least 7 times, then he has not truly lived a samurai. Those were different times, however. It was common for a samurai to fall out of favor with their lord and be turned loose to wander. For company men like myself, the choice is serve or die. Is there anything else you would like to discuss? Okay, More about being a ghoul? Preparing for the eventuality of killing me and collecting the bounty. Make sure you leave my face intact. I would prefer it to be well-preserved trophy. Don't worry, I'll have it stuffed and mounted on the wall. Who'd want such an ugly trophy anyway? Maybe I can sell your body to an herb shop. One of the stodgy traditional ones. Okay, don't worry, I'll have it stuffed and mounted on my walls. Gaishu bared his teeth in rictus grin. You can hear a faint chuckle rumble in the back of his throat. Now that would be an illustrious end to my career. A severed head decorating a leaking wreck of a boat, home to extremely private individuals who will never show me off. Couldn't you sell it to a museum or something of that sort? Gaicho grows serious, leaning back. If you wish to know about what it is like to be me, ask away. I see no reason to conceal the details of my condition. Okay, most ghouls smell like rotting meat. Why don't you? Diet and cleanliness. Most ghouls eat rotting flesh and do not bathe. I eat fresh meat and bathe regularly. Are you immortal? Considering this, Gaishu leans onto one elbow. I have no idea. I do not believe there has been any organized studies of ghoul longevity. Most strains of the human metahuman vampiric virus impart a semblance of extended life, but I do not believe that the Krieger strain is one. Somehow, I think it is more likely that I will die in combat than of old age, no matter how long I live. It might be interesting to ask a doctor. Well, you don't look tremendously healthy, that's true. Are you referring to this? Gaichu gestures to some of the discolorations and nodules around his neck and scalp. They look gruesome, but they seem to be as much a part of ghoul physiology as horns and dermal deposits are for trolls. So you eat people. What's that like? Gaichu blinks a few times and cocks his head as if to stare at the ceiling. What is it like to eat anything else? Or for diabetic to take insulin? It is like that, a fact of life. I have found that most people are revolted by the concept of eating the flesh of humans rather than the act itself. Taken in isolation of social concerns, humans are no more or less edible than most mammals. The flesh can be of poor or high quality, depending on all the factors you would expect, diet, lifestyle, etc. I prefer to prepare my meals as I would sashimi, light garnish and flavoring, but with an emphasis on the taste of the base meat. Do I enjoy it? No, not especially. Some Japanese are fond of pork and chicken sashimi, but I have never been one of them. But it is a fact that I must accept, and if it is how things will be, I will make the best of it. Do you feel bad about having to eat people? No, but I was never a vegetarian, so why should I? It does not matter where the meat comes from. Someone who died in a car accident is as viable as someone I kill. I admit, I have eaten people that I have killed, but that was out of necessity. I was going to kill them anyway. Why let their bodies go to waste? What's the deal with your teeth? What deal are you referring to? Did you file them down into those points? No, they are actually new teeth created by the infection. I suppose it is natural advantage to have teeth better suited for carnivorous pursuits. Let's talk about something else. We were talking about your father bailing you out of jail. Ah yes, I do recall you asking about that. Is something the matter? You said that if I came back later, you'd tell me what happened. If you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to. Well, we don't have to. I have given you my word, and I intend to keep it. Do not be concerned. I simply have not spoken of my family in a long time. Sounds like you may not have gotten along. Not when I was younger, no. But we came to an understanding eventually. It simply took some time to get there. Longer than he would have liked, I suspect. He gave me an ultimatum after my run-in with Shiawa's security. He told me that he had cut a backroom deal with a rival in Shiawa's to keep me out of prison. The charges would be suspended if I finished high school and studied at Kyoto University with the intent of joining Renraku. If I did not, Shiawas would have taken me into custody and I would spend time in prison. What did that cost him? I'm surprised he cut a deal at all. Typical corporate politics at work. Well, it's true. That is one perspective. I prefer to think of it as a man protecting the son that he loved, because his son was stupid and thoughtless. This was the act of a man harming his company to protect his family. I do not think that as a common quality in these times. I had always taken my family for granted, raised in a Renraku family, going to Renraku schools, always had a sense of place, of belonging where I was. The thought of all that vanishing, I simply could not imagine it. Suddenly, the reality of my actions became clear. From then on, I tried to be the son he wanted, and he seemed glad of it. We grew much closer over the next few years. He took time off to visit me when I was living in Kyoto. Why would that be unusual? He was a very busy man in those days. A lot of responsibility and very little time for himself. I was impressed that he could carve off as much time as he did, just to go camping with his son. Camping doesn't seem like every Japanese pastime. It is more popular than you would think. There is less open physical space in Japan than in North American nations, but most of Japan is still undeveloped. The steep mountain and valleys make construction outside of the flatlands prohibitively expensive, and the area around Kyoto is protected from development. We made several trips to the area between Kyoto and Nara, around the village of Ide. We camped in the mountains above it. We would hunt wild deer and boar there, using my family's antique arquebus. That's a strange choice of weapon. It is a choice of expediency. It is nearly impossible for a private citizen to own a firearm in Japan, which is why you may so often read Yakuza attacks involving swords and cleavers. As the Tanegashima that my family owns is from the 18th century, it is exempt from ordinary regulations. Perhaps ironically, hunting with my father is how I learned to prepare raw meat. Strange to think that this inadvertently prepared me for my current state of affairs. So, how do you prepare it? Soak the meat in brine water and simmer it at low heat for several hours. Let it cool and repeat the process over several days. It cannot get too hot or I am unable to eat it. This process brings out the collagen in the meat. When it is done, I spice it with ginger and sansho pepper. Again, not too much, mundane food is anathema to me. Those were the good days. I am sorry I cannot go back to those times. When one joins the Red Samurai, one must give up all attachments to one's previous life. The company, the code, and the unit become the entirety of your world. Even your family ties have to be cut. Especially those. Anything that could distract you from a mission must be purged. Commitment to the unit and the company must be total. Applicants must be human, Japanese, and utterly devoted to Renraku. Your unit becomes your family. Your commander is your father and mother. Your teammates are your siblings. Red Samurai are not allowed to reveal our identities and position to anyone outside the Special Operations Group. Even if we wanted friends outside the unit, we could not have them. So how did you end up joining the Renraku military? A fair question, given my youthful indiscretions. Are you familiar with the Kempeitai? Aren't they Japanese political police? Yes. Much like the commissars in the Soviet Union, they are responsible for enforcing political and social orthodoxy. Not only concerned with the army, the Kempeitai also enforce certain laws with regards to the general populace. It's my understanding that they're Gestapo. Seems like a useful thing to have to ensure national pride. Well, depends on point of view, I suppose. National pride it is. That is exactly what the Emperor told the nation when they were reactivated in 2036. He said, in uncertain times and an era of great change, we must remember what it is to be Japanese. In practice, they are usually petty thugs. When I was enrolled at Kyoto University, I studied global security and political science. It is the major generally used as a gateway to private security postings with both government and corporate militaries. I knew I wanted to fight. I was a young man, and my blood was always up. One of the requirements was that students join the Youth Brigade Kempeitai. The Youth Brigade is a bit like ROTC in North America and the Young Falcons, or the District Officer Program of the Republic of Korea. Members learn to be soldiers without actually joining an army. They perform community service and promote civic pride. Performance and prestige in the Kempeitai used to dictate later job opportunities, a bit like a good internship. Did you enjoy it? Do you have to be a good fascist to get a good job? Seems like the kind of thing Renraku would look favorably upon. When I was in school, the megacorporations looked favorably on youth brigade service. At that time, the interests of the emperor and the corporations were aligned, a grand drive to return Japanese industry to the forefront of the world economy. Good marks from your youth brigade commander were a sure sign that you would be offered a good position with corporate security, and I wanted to be the best. These days, the megacorporations have begun to resist that kind of nationalism in favor of corporate pride. Youth brigade service is becoming a black mark rather than a positive. I do not know if the alternative is any better though. When I was nearing graduation, I was approached by a recruiter with Renraku security. She told me I came from a good family and could have a promising career with the company. She offered to fast-track my application forward, a potential Red Samurai position, 3 years with the Renraku military as a junior officer, and guaranteed placement in a Red Samurai training billet of my choosing. The pay was good, and the excitement of being an elite was an attractive proposition. I accepted, but I did not truly understand what I was signing up for. As I told you before, they force you to give up everything except the company and unit. That was made clear to me, but I did not truly understand it. So what happened? Exactly what you would expect happened. I signed the contract and became a soldier in Renraku's army. I was physically fit, at the top of my class, and it seemed inevitable I would see my desires fulfilled. Obviously, I succeeded. The training was extremely difficult, both mentally and physically. I knew that I would be isolated from my old life, but I did not anticipate the full extent of that isolation. All Red Samurai recruits report to a facility called the Forge in Chiba. You are assigned a unit, you and 4 other recruits, and for the next 2 years, the Forge will be your home and prison. Shaking his head wistfully, Gaichu snorts. It seems ridiculous in retrospect. We were all so young. None of us had any idea what we were doing, except trying to become the best soldiers in the world. And yet, those strangers became my new family, in the absence of the old. Tell me about the members? That chapter of my life is over and done with. They are no longer part of my world. Why would you care about any of that? If they're still hunting you, I need to know about them. If I understand how you are trained, I can make better use of your skills. Well, very well, that is a fair point. When I was younger, I would have more readily cut off my fingers than tell you what you ask. You must understand that secrecy is absolute, even among the Red Samurai. Your identity becomes secret, erased from any database that might connect you to the Red Samurai. You use only your codename when in the field, and your given name is known only to your commanders and your unit. Even the other Red Samurai units have no idea who you really are. Finally looking up from his hands, Gaishu leans back against the boxes. Contact with the outside world is cut off completely. Even once training is over, your communications are restricted. Maintaining relationships outside of those you work with is frowned upon. That sounds horribly isolating. By design it is. It forces recruits to bond with their unit and transfer every emotion they have for their old friends and family to the unit that they must work with. If there is a tighter bond among any other special forces units, I would be surprised. Red Samurai units are always 5 members, one of whom is a spellcaster. During training, each member takes turns being commander. The most competent is given be laid permanently upon graduation. Why don't they assign a more seasoned commander? The way I have heard it, they worried that it would lead to the commander thinking of the unit as an asset to be used, rather than a family to protect. That they would see themselves as above the team. They have no idea, I have no idea if that is true or not, but that is what I have heard. Ishiria was our commander. He came from a rich family in Saitama, the kind of family where he was given every advantage possible, with the expectation that he would keep the family name prestigious. He was older than the rest of us, as he'd already spent 6 years in the army, a very severe man, rarely given to humor. Takagawa was usually the second in command. As our designated marksman, he tended to have a better tactical view how an operation should be run, simply because he needed to study the terrain more. He loved to get us laughing. Without him, I think I would have gone crazy for the first few months. Our mage's name was Sasaki. She had been in training as a Miko, an apprentice priestess, when her magic began to manifest. She was in the unit for the challenge, and for the money. Her family had always been poor, and they had always told her she would never amount to anything. I think she had joined the Red Samurai just to prove them that she could do anything she wanted. My kind of attitude, I admit. Gaichu cocks his head, amused. I am unsurprised to hear it. You and Sasaki shared similar attitudes. Neither of you stops to consider if your goals are attainable. You simply know that they are. Our heavy gunner's name was Aomori. He kept the team honest with itself. He never had a disparaging word for anyone, but would not hesitate to call someone out for their behavior. Sasaki loved that about him. Really, she loved all of him. The two were discreet, but discretion only goes so far in such a small team. Still, we respected their privacy where possible. Is that kind of thing allowed? If the unit commander allows it, yes. We were given incredibly wide leeway in what to allow or forbid in our unit, the belief being that results were the only thing that mattered. If the unit failed, it would fail as a whole. Sasaki and Aomori were crazy about each other, and it would have done more harm to keep them apart. Lastly, there was me. I was the close quarters and breaching expert, the first man in the door when we had to clear a room. I was the perfectionist on the team. Aomori could get us to do anything, but I was the one who made certain we did it. Well, with style. How do you mean? If a thing is worth doing, it is worth doing well. If that thing is also your duty, it is worth doing perfectly. Many times we would perform a drill or exercise well enough, but that was not good enough if I had to trust my life to it. That was why we became one of the best teams in the organization's history. That's a thing to be proud of? Of course it is. Do you think I do not know that? I apologize. It is just those feelings are still raw sometimes. Even if I were to be cured, I could never go back. They have been disgraced, and I have done unforgivable things. I have been cast out for good. What do you mean? Gaichu closes his eyes. When they ambushed me in Fukuoka, it was fight or die. I killed 2 of them before I escaped. I will not be returning to the unit no matter what. He opens his eyes after a moment. It is not an easy memory to grapple with. Okay, I'll take your time. Thank you, Hulk. I am sorry I cannot talk about it now. I need to process the emotions. They are still raw. I am tired. Come back later and we can talk more. Okay, that was a very interesting chat, actually. All these characters are quite interesting, I have to say. But the actor dude is really getting quite creepy. Anyway, this has been a pretty long episode already, so I'm going to finish it here and continue in next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.